imagine if you were Damon Lindelof and you could market your own brand of yellow Watchmen masks. Because those masks they wore in Watchmen worked perfectly for COVID. Like that could have been like the highest selling thing at Comic-Con this year.
Welcome to Panelism, the podcast where we talk about the comics and graphic novels worth having on your shelf. I am Todd A.
I'm Taylor Trask, and you delivered that just perfectly. Having been away for a little while, you jumped right back in without any issue at all. Todd, you're a true consummate professional.
Just all the behind the scenes that no one. I think I've told you before. Like I listened to this one podcast. I don't know if I should name and shame. Although they put it out, so maybe it's not shameful, but where they do this funny thing where they'll have bloopers of them trying to do the intro.
Oh, geez.
Like at the end of the show.
Okay. We've done that from time to time.
Yeah, that's true. I always think it's funny because, it usually comes off so polished for them.
Yeah. It's good to know that people are still people at the end of the day. They're real, man. They're
definitely
mistakes.
people. And we've been recording and I had to remember what to say. So when I came in, it was good that I was calm. Normally when I mix the show, I realize, if I'm mixing the episode, I realize that if I've done the intro, the volume spikes so hard on that, welcome to Panelism.
Yeah.
So I was trying to keep it down today. But
Got it.
Oh boy, man. Here we are. It's another week under the pandemic.
Yeah, man. I've lost count. I've lost track of time, to be honest. Like it's May 21st when we're recording this in 2020. And I'm like, it was just May 1st. But yet at the same time, April felt like it was 8 years long. So I'm just my entire year. And I have some things coming up later this year that are going to screw it up even more. So I have a lot of stuff this year. It's just, ugh.
And that Memorial Day thing bearing down on us, like you and I probably don't react to this as much because we're, how do we want to phrase it in the nice way? We're independent businessmen.
That's right.
We're
make enough
mostly freelancers, and to me, it's not really like a day off, but it was interesting to hear from clients that like, oh, they're off on Monday. And I'm like, to do what? Like, please don't go to my beach. Like, this is awful.
I always look at both Memorial. Well, not so much since I got married, it's a little different, but for the longest time, Memorial Day and Labor Day were like not days off, but days to catch up. It's like, okay, good.
Right.
I can actually, no one's going to be talking to me. I can actually
get
everything done. I might step out for an ice cream cone and then I'm good. All right, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting date to keep in there. I think my rough count was like somehow today I was like, I think we've been in like lockdown for 10 weeks. Oh my God.
And you're in California where it's more strict than it is here in Colorado. Like
Well, I'm in Orange County, so it's not quite the Texas of Southern California, but it's it's not LA.
Oh, that's right, because LA County, or the mayor rather of LA, is being really draconian.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. And maybe with good reason. It's just, one of the interesting elements of this whole thing is we're seeing little experiments play out across the country. So we're actually getting to see federalism, when see if it works or not, and like what does that actually look like? I don't know.
That's not a rabbit hole we want to follow down on.
No.
But boy, do I have thoughts. No, but I told you to because we had a couple of loose notes on what to talk about today, and I had to reschedule our recording because I was just in the midst of like a prolonged what I usually describe as a slow rolling anxiety attack, which is one of those that like takes up multiple days and I can't really diagnose the problem and I can't figure out. And I just, after I kind of got through it, I texted you and said, hey, maybe that's a good thing to tie into all this, when we're talking about all, because we're going to talk about comic stores coming back to business and things like that. So I don't know, it seemed appropriate. Like, how do you come back from that? How do you get out of that? It's just a mental health PSA. if you will. And I don't know that there's there's definitely no magic solution for me. I think what I figured out at the end of this week was that, or in the middle of this week, I felt like, oh, it's so hard in the middle of that attack. But once all of those hormones kind of clear out of my body, all the stress hormones, it does sort of just like go away.
Yeah.
And what has, been a source of constant frustration and strain for me for, like 20 years now is trying to think that there's some sort of solution or something to get out of that. And it's all like, there's a lot of prophylactic measures that you can take ahead of time to sort of like boost the positive hormones in your body. This is all stuff that I've gathered from years of therapy. But it's sort of like once those measures kind of fail, then I don't like, once you're in it, it's sort of like you have to like just sort of self-care and ride it out or something.
Yeah.
And
it really feels like a disease, not a disease, but a cold that you do have to ride out. Like it just has to pass. Cause like, you're right. There the things that are prophylactic. Like I always say, cause I struggle with this too, but I always say like, I mean, and it's a cliche, but it's true. Exercise does help. Like if you go out for a walk outside, and now, and with it being nicer out in some states, relaxing restrictions and stuff, more people have opportunity to do this, but go outside, go for a walk in the sun, like enjoy the outside. Don't take your phone. Don't take anything with you. Just go out and just be detached from everything and go outside, get your heart rate going. Cause that will give, help a little bit of blood flow where it needs to go. I would also say, I'm not saying kind of in that column of cure-alls, like in anti-inflammatories, whether it be, I take some fish oil fairly regularly, and that seems to help a lot. Because I deal with this. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. I historically have had very severe triggering anxieties to the point where I've had at least a handful of situations where I've had to leave a room because I've had a panic attack. And so like that usually happens if I haven't been exercising enough, if I'm inflamed somehow. So anti-inflammatories is good.
Interesting.
The other thing and this is more just state of mind, but as you're going for your walk, as if you're doing a meditating routine, you have to remind yourself that your world is everything you can control and nothing more. And so like if there's other things, the other external influences, whether they be political or economic or whatever it might be, like you can't necessarily control those things. You can only work on what you can work on. And the more you sort of accept that and affirm that, kind of makes everything feel like, okay, all right. So I kind of make your world smaller, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add on to, because there's two things there that you said that like are very germane to this particular anxiety episode that I was having. One is that exercise and that meditating and stuff, those are, to me, I think those are the preventative measures in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I went, maybe it was Monday of this week where I went, I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of my house. I got to feel, I just got to get out because I'm stressed. And I was like, I'm just gonna go for a walk, sunshine, just whatever. And then I was in a severe like anxiety attack.
Oh, wow.
For the duration of that walk. Like my brain would not stop thinking of terrible, like just the awful, like, the recorder. That's a thing I read about panic, years ago, was like, it starts playing the tape, and you're like just trying to stop the tape of worrying thoughts, but that just adds to the worry. And that was my entire walk. And I get back to the house and I'm like, fuck that,
Made it worse.
I feel worse, you know?
Yeah.
And then secondly, you're totally right about like it, I think, and I don't know if this is preventative or if you can reassure yourself in the moment. I think it's kind of individual, but that thing of like, hey, I can only control this little part of my world. And we're just, what's happening in the pandemic is like, we're feeling like, I mean, I at least feel this way when I step outside, or if I'm inside thinking of stepping outside, like it's like there is so much worry external to myself that all of a sudden presses on me, because it used to be like a great antidepressant of mine to just go to a coffee shop, like just take the iPad. Exactly. Just get out of your own head, go to a coffee shop and sit there and read or whatever. And I not being able to do that is like, okay, so now I've got to think of everything. And, I've already got some obsessive behavior. So like combining all that with like the worry in the world is weird. Today on my walk, which was mostly calm, it wasn't as relaxing as yesterday's walk, but today definitely came within 6 feet of me was a guy completely he was only clothed in now it's leopards have spots, but what's the animal? It's not a tiger, but like a cheetah striped, I don't know.
Okay.
Silk boxers, riding a bicycle.
Was it Joe Exotic?
No mask.
Was it Joe Exotic?
Way more tan than Joe Exotic.
I don't know. That guy got pretty tan in some of those shots.
But it was it was just one of those things of like, I'm out, I'm like, trying to avoid everybody. And then this guy just zips past me, like, 2 feet from me. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Anyway, so it's that kind of thing you can't plan for. I'll tell you an interesting thing I wanted to note that came from my therapist, which I thought was a good thing to put in this PSA is he was telling me to like look out for those anxiety warning signs and then take like proactive measures to overcome it ahead of time.
Yes,
and he asked me like, well, what are the, warning signs that you said? And I said, well, my stomach, it always seems to hit my digestive, tract first. Like my stomach feels a little upset, or I feel hungry, or feel like I don't want to eat or something. And he said, actually, by the time you're feeling that, way too late. He said, he gave me a bunch of examples. And among those that I've taken note of are if I'm experiencing a real attention deficit. Like he was like, if you can't concentrate on something, that's probably because there's like a bunch of stress hormones in you. If your eyesight is starting to like strain, that's probably because there's a bunch of stress hormones in you. So me as a relatively new glasses wearer, I know like if I put those glasses on before noon, that's like I'm generally, and that's like hand in hand with the attention deficit thing. If I can't focus on a task and I got the glasses on, it's like, oh yeah, I got stress hormones just running through my body. So he was like, if those things happen to you, go lie down, listen to some like ambient music, and meditate and put your head in a different place. Like think of some pleasant place. And the problem this week was I did that. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to that place that's like real relaxing to me. And all I could see were like people walking around me, getting too close to me. And I was like, oh no, I can't like even imagine myself out of it in order to like calm the release of those stress hormones, which is another big thing that my therapist talked about, is that your body is kind of a binary to an extent system. Whatever, like if once you hit 51% of stress hormones, you're totally stressed. But
interesting.
In order to combat it, you only have to hit 51% of positive hormones.
Do you know what my telltale sign usually is?
I would love to hear this.
I stop breathing.
Oh,
like I hold my breath, like
I know what you're talking about.
Jodie Foster and Maverick, because I'm just like I don't even notice it sometimes. I've had to be very deliberate about just and I'm still breathing through my nose, but very sparsely. Like there could be no oxygen in the room and I wouldn't necessarily know it because I have slowed my breathing to almost nothing.
Yeah,
and then it's like
shallow breath. Where, it's like not going all the way in.
Yeah, and it's just like, and I'll go, 10, 15 minutes. And it's in a situation where I'm not talking, not moving around a lot, just sitting, doing some deliberate focused work, but I'll catch myself. I'll even catch it when I'm driving. And that's where I really started to notice it, because I would get very stressed out when we used to drive from Denver to Colorado Springs when we first moved down here. I would just get incredibly stressed out on those afternoon trips. And I would catch myself. I'm like, wait, I'm not breathing. What the hell? And so I would start to just intentionally breathe and just, even if I didn't need that much oxygen, just breathe, be very conscious of it. And slowly but surely I still have that as an issue, but I have significantly reduced the amount of times that I get just sort of triggered without, because once you hit that 51%, it's kind of all over until it passes. Right.
Well, and that's, I think that's the final note that I had, which I, people who experience anxiety in this way understand this innately. But people who don't often will tell you like, oh, well, just don't think about it, or think about positive things or something. It's like, no, that actually makes it worse, because by the time I'm anxious to that degree, that, biochemically means that 51% of the hormones in my body are stress hormones. Mm-hmm. So you telling me not to stress about it, like, you can't think your way out of it, because it is a chemical reaction. It's not, your intelligent brain in that way is can only help you go do the proactive things to prevent it, or to start producing those positive hormones. But you can't just, quote, think your way out of it, or don't think about it, because that just stresses you more, puts more stress hormones in you. And I mean, I grew up like so many people of, that was a common response I heard when I first started having panic attacks was, well, just don't think about it, or, think of this positive thing or whatever. And it's like, you're just stressing me out more.
Well, I used to take that approach, just not knowing that there were other ways to go about it, and then not realizing that it was chemical. So I would go and sit in the park for like not 8 hours, but like 3 to 4 hours trying to do that. And I would emerge, and I would sometimes be successful, but the amount of energy required to do that, I'd basically have to go home and sleep, because I'm like, well, now I'm done. And so then like my day is shot, because I spent it all doing that. And that was helpful to some degree. I also used to take scenic drives a lot. That used to be my go-to all the time.
Yeah.
And that trick, I would just I would just go cruising around, just to wherever, not speed or go illegally or anything, but just like try to explore some new place. Because when you go on vacation, like I was telling my wife about this the other night, when you go on vacation, if you do it right, your entire time should basically be one continuous flow state. And that's because you're absolutely doing something brand new. You're seeing a new environment. You're trying new food. Especially if you go to a place where they don't speak English, you're hearing different languages. Your entire brain is just operating, and it doesn't give you even a chance to think about stressful things, because you're just taking in all this new, interesting sensory input. Right. And so you just kind of fall into this perpetual flow state. That's why a lot of people, when they come back from vacation, they're just like, they're buzzing. Like, you feel this like energy. It's like, oh my God. And it's almost a little shocking. It's like coming out of a mushroom trip or something when you come back to your home, because you're just like, oh my God, like you're suddenly confronted with routine again. You're confronted with familiarity. And so, all that to be said, the scenic drives for me was almost a sort of a hack to get at that flow state, because I'll at least, drive somewhere I haven't been before, or discover some new neighborhood just because. And then once you've lived in a place long enough, you kind of lose those opportunities. You have to make them for yourself again. That's
a great pointer, I think. I mean, that's a great tip to say, like, because I think that's both preventative, and it's something that, at least in some moments, you can do.
Yeah.
I probably should have left the house a couple of times in my car, that is, where it's so I'm not worried about like physically, like walking somewhere or whatever, and I like the way you said it about getting in that flow state of just traveling somewhere.
Well, I want to be careful. Like, clearly there is not a one size fits all solution to this. If you're listening out there and you haven't tried some of these things, give it a try, but understand your results will definitely vary. That's why I'm holding off saying, like, get high, have some cannabis, have an edible, because like that works for me. But Jesus, if you're in the wrong setting, like if you're in the wrong mindset and you take mushrooms or cannabis or whatever it might be, that could make it way worse. So like, be very, very, listen to yourself, be very mindful, try things, but understand that half of it is definitely chemical and is often beyond your control, and the other half may not be. But there's not a silver bullet, sadly. And it's, as you get older, it may ebb and flow. It may get worse, it may get better. And if you get to the point where, honestly, like if you've tried stuff and you're just like, man, I've tried it all, nothing works, go seek help. Go find somebody, find a therapist, find a friend. Don't wallow in it, because that's the worst thing you can do.
Man, and that is it is very hard to explain to people who've had a bad experience. Like, the first therapist I ever saw was not necessarily a bad experience, but it was definitely not positive. It was like, it didn't help me. I didn't get the feedback I needed. I didn't get the understanding I needed of what was going on. And you've got to find that like right person for that. And that sometimes that takes a while. Like, I mean, that's a really weird, struggle of its own. is to find the person. But it is, I mean, but it's true. Like and this to me is like a universal statement of like human compassion and like how we all can get along, is that we're all made of the same chemicals, but all those chemicals are in different amounts in our bodies. And that's how we react differently to these things. And that should both endear us to other humans and make us mindful that we're all going to react to different things differently, and that's definitely a thing that was going on with me this week, was that I was interacting with some humans that didn't totally understand what was going on in my life. So
I'm sure there's many out there listening who have had similar experiences over the last 2 months, so hopefully this has been helpful. If you guys have if anybody listening has specific things that you've tried that work, let us know. Maybe we'll shout them out in a future episode or pass that on. But hopefully this has been good. I don't want to dwell on this too much though, because we have other important things.
We're talking. I think the theme is recovery, and What has been in your queue lately?
Well, as we've sort of slow marched our way back to some sense of normalcy, I have found, because for a hot second there, I mean, kind of going back to that mid-March to mid-April period of just total uncertainty, I lost the desire to consume anything new. I was completely falling back, with the exception of Devs was the only thing I was watching that was new. I had fallen back into just, everything, all comfort things, books I've read before, movies, TV shows, all that stuff. So only in the last few weeks have I really been like hungry for new stuff again. And
interesting.
Fortunately, I've had timing wise, the second season of What We Do in the Shadows on Hulu FX, which we've talked about this offline, is just delightful. We're both big fans of the movie. Taika Waititi directed, starred in it. Jermaine Clements in it. I forget the other guy's name. He's awesome too. But a lot of those.
Rhys Darby's in it.
Rhys Darby's in it. Yeah. So a lot of Flight of the Conchords sort of connective tissue. So
and
when they announced,
I might not say I'm a big fan of the movie. I mean,
okay.
I was I was very interested in the movie. I think the movie has a lot of funny parts, but I will say the TV show has kicked the movie's ass.
Which is shocking, because when they announced the TV show, I was like, why do this? Like, why is this? This just seems like a money grab.
Yeah,
I
could not have cared.
I didn't realize that Taika and Jermaine were absolutely in complete control of it. Like, they write the episodes, they direct most of them together. They're basically the showrunners, and it is, the show not only has all that same DNA from the movie, but they have intentionally called back things from the movie many times, whether it be characters appearing or different sort of mythology that's popped up. Like, the TV show absolutely is a fan of the movie itself. Yeah. And then it takes it to such a wonderfully interesting level that it is. I think I binged all of season 1.
Yeah.
And then season 2 is about halfway through. I mean, for me, the inclusion of Matt Berry makes all the difference. Like, that guy is.
Wait, is he in season 1?
No, Matt Berry's in both seasons. He's Laszlo.
Right. Yeah.
Which is just like, I mean, you cast him to get what he does. Like, he doesn't do a character so much as he just shows up and is himself. And it's like, it's wonderful. I would say second to that though is the inclusion of Colin Robinson, who is the energy vampire. Like, that guy, and we've seen that guy before in The Office and other things, but as a character, I mean, I would, if he was the only character on the show, I would absolutely watch it, because everything he does is just so perfect. Like, we've talked about energy vampires and psychic vampires a little bit before, and just to see that reflected in TV and like, he covers all the cliches. It's just magnificent.
There's a scene that is like rightfully, I don't know if it's meme status, but it's like the one that I've seen on YouTube where when he runs into the, they don't call her a psychic vampire, but the other vampire. The emotional vampire in the office.
Yeah.
And the like examples of them walking up to people in the office to feed off their energy is like, that is every corporate gig I've ever had. There's one of them there.
Yep.
It's it's terrifyingly real.
Oh, just wait till season 2, because you haven't watched season 2 yet.
There's an episode
where he gets a promotion, and that's all I'm going to say. As a person who has written extensively about six systems and corporate culture, as you have, you will appreciate that episode more than I have, I think. The other things I'm watching though, Rick and Morty has come back for the second half of season 4, which has been equally good. Like there has been probably some of the best episodes they've ever done in this last batch. And I think they have 2 more.
That's so crazy to think that they're only in season 4.
Well, they had a lot. I mean,
they had a hiatus.
Yeah.
Right?
Season 1, I think was 2015. I think 2015. And then, there was a hiatus. So considering that, I mean, 5 years, 4 seasons, they've been keeping a nice, pretty consistent. I think there was basically like a year gap, but then I think seasons 1 and 2 were very close after each other. So it kind of felt like it was moving faster. But anyway, if you've been away from Rick and Morty, the most recent episode is called the Vat of Acid episode. It literally says that the Vat of Acid episode, like in the title card. And it is just, I sat there it was thrilling because you didn't know where it was going. And it's some of the best writing and dialogue and character interactions they've ever had. Like if this is the level they're operating at, I cannot even imagine where we're headed from here. So check that out. And then I just want to give one more shout out to the show Devs, also on FX Hulu. FX Hulu has been, it's an FX produced joint with Hulu. So both Devs and What We Do in the Shadows appears on Hulu day and date. So watch those there. But Devs, oh my God, you told me about it just as we were going into quarantine. I caught up on it. If you want a rabbit hole to fall down, go to the Devs subreddit. Holy crap. You're going to learn things about determinism you didn't even know you had the mental capacity for. But it has been I have some complaints with it, but as a piece of storytelling, it's Jesus. That's, ever since Ex Machina came out, I was just like, I wanted more of that kind of thing from that creator, and he crushes it. So you need to catch up on Devs, Todd, so that you and I can talk about it at length in a future episode of Panelism.
For sure. And there's another episode somewhere in there where I knew by the time we recorded it, but where you had shocked me before recording, where I thought I was only like 1 episode behind. And it turns out that no, it was not a 4 episode limited series. It was 8. So I'm 5 episodes behind. That's all interesting to hear. Because I also, right before we were recording, I did not understand that season 2 of What We Do in the Shadows was out. So I got a lot to catch up on. But I did watch all of Tiger King.
Oh dear God. What'd you think?
I mean, I like most docuseries, I think it's at least 1 or 2 episodes too long. And I feel like have we finally reached the zenith of of like watching people's messed up lives,
that show certainly is the top of the mountain in terms of that. Here's a better question.
It's not a documentary anymore. It's like a reality show. It is itself 100%. A reality show, and it's like, it just left me feeling so gross.
Do you think Carol killed her husband? That's the most important question.
I don't really have any thought on it.
What is that, matricide? Is that what that's when you kill your spouse?
No, that's when you kill your mother.
Spousal side. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called.
Well, so what is it when you kill your father? If matricide is your mother, patricide. Oh, of course, duh.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know.
I felt the same way. I picked up episode 1, and I was just like, oh, I don't want to watch this, and then I couldn't stop. And so I watched it all, and I was just like, I would have been better off had I not, I suffered through it. And part of me wanted to kind of feel part of we have so few cultural touch points anymore. We can all kind of gather around and like share a common sort of, did you see it? I saw it. What'd you think? Man, we have so few of those that I was like, well, this is maybe the last one we have for a while. I should probably at least have something to associate with.
I mean, what a gross thing that we all shared during pandemic,
I know.
Right? Like that itself, that was the pandemic of media during the pandemic of.
Are you ready to see Nicolas Cage as Joe Exotic? Because that's coming our way soon.
Please, no.
He's producing and starring in the TV. There's going to be a TV series, a limited TV series. Which I was like, why? What could they possibly do?
Why fictionalize this thing that's already so hard to believe?
It's not going to. There's no way you can make that it's going to feel boring compared to the documentary. It's going to be like, I mean, even with Nick Cage in that role, it's like, dude, you can't be any more of a character than he already is. Like, I just don't.
And you're Nick Cage. Like, you're already like, that's a different level. Now more than ever, we need more people in those t-shirts to say, stop making stupid people famous. Like,
that's a great point.
This is especially in a world where like, and this is just, I mean, this is all on me, but like, I can't believe that I wasted time watching that when there was What We Do in the Shadows season 2 or Devs out there. Like, that's what I should have been watching. And I finally and at the beginning of this, you know, I said that The Expanse was on my list of stuff to watch. And it's only recently that I'm like, oh yeah. I think I'm following this now. I got to get into this. So,
well, there was also that element of, you know, on Tiger King, their lives were such a train wreck, such a tire fire that it actually made your life feel normal. I think there was a little of that too, which is like, let's all watch this so we can feel less bad about where we all are right now as a people.
Honestly, I don't think I felt as gross about it. Like watching it, I think I was like, oh, okay, that's over. I thought for some reason it would have a much more dramatic ending because from like the first episode that he's in jail. Yep. So I thought surely there's like, and it's weird because he's in jail for a really serious thing, but I still felt like it wasn't serious enough, or like it was kind of a you know, like they didn't, I don't know what I felt, but what made me feel gross was when that last episode ended and you know, it just starts auto playing and there's fucking Joel McHale to take me through like a reality show after show to talk about what we just watched. And I was like, get the fuck out of here.
That got tagged after I watched it because they filmed that like a week later. And so like, I didn't have to endure that sadly, but I've heard.
And so I didn't watch it, but it was like, as soon as it started, I was like, okay, now we've all missed the point, because I know that we watched it with that human soap opera eye, but it didn't even have a moment to like breathe as a documentary, because immediately it's like the cash in of like, what a crazy, you know, reality show we all just watched. That was too much for me. So that's when I was like, ugh. Too
meta. Well, let's also talk about, in terms of recovery, the big sort of feature of this episode is Back the Comeback. And it is, like I said earlier, it's the May 21st, 2020. So we've been, we are now, 2 days into comic shops reopening again this Wednesday. Many of them have been open, but this Wednesday they actually started distributing books again. Thank God. It had been about a month and some change, I think, since new books had actually gotten sent. Now, the interesting wrinkle here is there is, for the most part, one distributor for almost all mainstream comics, and that is Diamond. There are other smaller niche distributors for things like, I think Drawn and Quarterly has a different system they use that actually gets them into like Barnes and Noble and stuff too. So that might be a little different. And there's some other niche players that have kind of their own thing, but by and large, Diamond is the big boy on campus. And you and I have actually, I got to do a mea culpa. You and I have actually thrown shade at Diamond in the past for being in a monopoly. And it's like, you know, like, why are they the only ones? Well, recently on the wonderful podcast Fat Man on Batman, specifically episode 279, they actually got Steve Geppi, the founder and CEO of Diamond, on for a lengthy-ish interview. I think it was like 25-minute interview. And he actually takes you through the history of Diamond and talks about the current environment and what they're doing. I actually have a lot of respect for both him and Diamond now, having heard his point of view. And I don't want to paraphrase it or you know, kind of do a deep dive on it now. Definitely go listen to episode 279 of Fat Man Beyond for that. But he basically says and makes a case that's like, look, I would love there to be competition, because the more distributors there are, the better comics are doing, the better we all do. So like, I would love that. Now, you could make an argument, well, maybe he's not sincere when he says that. I would like to think he is. He actually, the other thing I didn't know, Diamond is the sole distributor by sheer attrition. When they started, there were actually more distributors out there, and one by one, they all fell for a variety of reasons, whether it be bad business decisions, consolidation, acquisitions, just the ebb and flow of the comics industry. So somehow, by sheer luck, Diamond ended up the last man standing, and Steve Geppi has, largely been doing a great job keeping that going. I mean, they've been single-handedly, floating most comic book shops. I would love there to be competition too. I think it's a huge issue that one company, when they shut down, the entire industry shuts down. Essentially, that's a really dangerous choke point.
Exactly.
And we saw that play out. But at the same time, I think I really need to give Steve and Diamond a little bit more grace and credit, just in terms of their role. And just, he sounded like a guy who was just as sort of distraught about everything as we were. And who, let's hope there are more distributors. Maybe I've heard talk, I don't know if you've followed up on this too. I've heard talk that DC and Marvel are both considering doing their own in-house distribution, which could be interesting. I'm curious if other indies like, an Image and a Boom, or, Fantagraphics and a Boom or something would like join forces to do their own distributor. So we may see a lot of change and sort of evolution of things this year, as a result of COVID, as a result of Diamond, shutting down the way they did. What's your take on all that?
Well, I was super grateful to hear that perspective, and I didn't listen to the episode. I just heard it from you as you caught me up on it, and I thought, of course, and and I felt bad. Like, yeah, we did not give them any grace or go investigate on our own when we were throwing shade, but it sort of made sense of like they are the last man standing. And he's right. Some competition would probably like open it up a little bit, and then they're not going to feel what they must feel during this pandemic of like the responsibility, and like they're the scapegoat, for because you and I had talked about how, why aren't some of our favorite comics just putting out the digital editions? Well, that's probably, they probably already made the physical editions, and this has screwed up the whole thing, and they can't just take a bath on the physical. And I don't know, because I wonder, and I put this in our show notes of, what's that bigger picture look like? How does our relationship with comic book stores change? And even with the media itself, after this time, I worry when you say things like Marvel and DC may be looking at their distributing their own books, that they end up making that mistake that like what we're seeing happen in the podcasting world, where Spotify's, buying up a podcast and then consolidating all the episodes only on Spotify.
Man.
And it's like, I do feel like we need comics, we need podcasts, we need shows, we need everything like on as many channels as possible, not exclusive to one channel or something. Because I can see a world where Marvel has Marvel distribution and DC has DC distribution, and then Diamond has like all the indie books. And that kills Diamond's business, because it's like that volume is probably not as great as the two big ones.
Or it gives Diamond more focus and priority on those indie titles than they would have had otherwise. And they can do interesting, innovative stuff. They can package, things together. That might actually be a net positive. Now, where it can get really dicey, there's another rumor that Amazon might start buying at movie theaters, or specifically like Regal. Right. And then if that happens, I can see Disney going, well, we'll buy some theaters too. All of a sudden you have this race to own every point in the distribution system. Disney owns the theaters. They own, their own streaming and stuff. And then it's like, hey, we own Marvel. Let's just buy Marvel Comics because I don't think they own the comics division yet. Do they? If I'm mistaken about that, let's assume they do. And then so Disney owns the Marvel Comics. There's like, okay, we'll have our own distribution for the comics. And to top it off, we're going to start our own Disney-owned Marvel comic shops. And so then you have every point along the value chain they have a hand in. That's where I'm going to get really nervous, because we can't have indie comic shops. And there's going to be a lot that will not come back from this, which is going to be awful. One of the sort of the benefits of this Back the Comeback movement, and by the way, if you want to know more about that, go to backthecomeback.com. It began this week, but it's a sort of an initiative that's going to keep going. Lots of great ways to spread the words. Buy a T-shirt. There's some charity and stuff, but they're trying to raise money to help these indie comic shops that just didn't see this coming, didn't have a plan for it. and literally had their hands tied. And it's like, look, we didn't do anything wrong. We can't stay afloat. So Back the Comeback is supposed to help them pull through, and hopefully they do. There are going to be some that just don't. So, in those situations, do those get bought by a DC or a Marvel, or do they, does DC or Marvel like go into those markets, a year from now, 2 years from now, and say, okay, we knew there was a comic shop here at one time, so we know the retail environment could work for it. We'll do our own. It's basically a loss leader for us, because if Disney owns, via Marvel, if Disney owns, let's just say 25 shops across the country, they don't even have to make money. They can almost be like a experiential node on the Disney Marvel platform that, they sell stuff, they engage, but they're almost like marketing vehicles. They don't have to cash flow. That's when it's going to get it's going to be like when Starbucks came in and started, basically putting their coffee shops everywhere and drowning out the local coffee shops. Like, Starbucks didn't have to, in those early days, make money. They just needed to keep opening coffee shops. And so it's like,
it's what does the that Amazon do? Strategy too.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, what does that do?
Amazon's like, we will undercut everyone. Yeah.
And maybe, the kind of like with Alamo Drafthouse being one of the few theater brands that I think will survive and thrive, maybe only the really good comic shops, the indie shops anyway, do survive. Like, maybe the ones that we've highlighted before on the show several times. Like, there's definitely some shops that you walk into and you're like, why is this still here? How are they still possibly in business? And then there are other shops that are like, holy crap, I hope this never goes away. This is amazing. And those I would hope stay around. And with any, if shops, I don't wish any shop to close that doesn't have to, but you would hope it would be the ones that just have been just coasting and haven't been trying very hard recently. I think about, there's one, I'm not gonna say who they are, but there is one in Tennessee we've talked about. You walk into it, the smell of cigarette smoke is so pungent that you're like, how do any of these books last? Like this, it's just, ugh. And it's just, everything about it is just disgusting and gross. The selection is terrible. Everything about it is awful. I'm like, why is the shop still here?
Well, and I see the other part of this component too is that Diamond and what was the other one? Oh, it's Alliance Game Distributors is also part of the Back the Comeback, but Diamond also had some game distribution that they did, and increasingly, as we've mentioned here and there on different shows, like I've been playing tabletop role-playing games, and so I visit game shops as much as, or maybe more than, comic book shops now, like specifically game shops, and they have got to have been set back on this. And there's one in particular that I go to out here that has a lot of floor space, and they have all that floor space because they have nightly game sessions, whether it's like Magic the Gathering or D&D or, Pathfinder or just tabletop like board games. But I don't know what they're doing during the pandemic. And they're one of those shops where, when you go to their website, it's circa 1995, and you can't do so their digital business was probably non-existent already. And their overhead was a little bit more than they needed because they had so much physical space. And it's like, how do they approach a thing like this, and how can that come back help them, and I guess, importantly, this was what the topic I wanted to raise was like, how is your relationship going to change to your comic book shop? When are you going to feel safe going there? Is it going to be more like, hey, I got a pull list and I just step in to pick that up? Or what's going to be different? Interesting
fact about me. I have never had a pull list. And I do that because I keep changing the priority of the books I want to read at any given time. So I have my own personal pull list I just sort of have on a OneNote file that I have, but I don't ever have it at the shop because when I go into a shop, I want it to be a feeling of pure discovery and like my own, like I want everything to be from my own hand. So like if I walk in and just pick up a bag of books, like I could do that online. Like I don't need the shop for that. So I want to make sure if I go into a shop, it's, I'm going in with maybe a few things in mind, but I could go in knowing that I could walk out with new things I've never even thought of before. Right. And so like that, as long as that experience is intact, I'll always go into shop. So for me, it's less. It's less do I feel safe, because I could walk into a shop right now, as long as, most of them have like requirement, hey, wear a mask, if you're sick, don't come in, etc. So as long as those things are being followed, I'll totally walk into a shop. I think for me, it's the lack of all the other supplemental stuff that shops do. So I've talked at length about like Escape Velocity had an amazing book club, which is probably gone indefinitely now. It may be a while before that comes back. That was amazing. Another comic shop in town, Muse, had a really nice back area for gaming. Because a lot of, I think, as well as they do with comics, they have, and this is actually since you were last in town, Todd, they moved into a different spot. They've got like a huge selection of gaming stuff and a lot of tables on the back. So all of that for them there was an excitement when you walked into Muse, and there was like a lot of games going on and just a lot of people there. That's all gone. So it's all these other incidental kind of related things that I think I'm going to miss the most for right now. I'll still be able to walk into a shop, grab a couple things, walk out and have a great experience. But it's that feeling of community that I want to make sure comes back quickly. Because that for me is, especially getting into comics over the last several years as I have, doing this podcast with you, that community element keeps it exciting, keeps it interesting. That's why Comic-Con works so well. That's why all the all the other cons work so well, because you're going to experiences with other people, and it's that's what I miss. That's what I miss.
Yeah, I think that's really well stated, and we don't have the time or the notes to get into it now, but I think it's an ongoing thing for us to think about on like, what does that future look like? Especially because both of us are in the digital business, and I've been thinking for 2 months on like, how do I help my clients like adapt to a quote new normal? It's a tough thing. It's a paradigm shift that's happening, and how do we keep those physical institutions alive and meaningful? In a era of increased precaution. But on a real positive note, I will say, or I will ask, what are those first books that you pick up, to back the comeback?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, Decorum by Jonathan Hickman. Like issue 1 came out right as the quarantine was happening. And, I've talked about it in a previous episode, but I'll talk a lot more about it as more issues come out and we get a kind of clearer picture for what he's up to. But this might be his opus. And it's like, we need number 2. Like, we need to know what's coming next. And so definitely, and that's one that I have sworn to buy physically as long as they keep putting out variant copies. Cause like the variant on number 1 is just, it should be the real cover. Like, I don't understand what this other cover even is. Like that, dude, make that the cover. So Decorum, definitely.
I agree about issue number 2. Have you seen that variant?
I have not yet. No.
But it is slated for June 10.
Oh, thank God. Finally. Because it was April, then it was May, and now it's June 10th.
Yeah.
I think his X-Men run is still ongoing, so that's one I'll pick up.
Now is he writing that?
Yeah, he's writing
still.
Yeah.
Okay.
The main X-Men, the main continuity X-Men, not like Excalibur or X-Force or any of those things. Like those he's kind of show running those, so they have to play within his outline, but X-Men itself is what he's doing. It's really too bad that books like They're Not Like Us and Nowhere Men, which strangely enough are both co-created by the actual editor-in-chief of Image Comics himself. Like those are basically done indefinitely. Like they may never come back. This would have been a great time to put those out digitally or at least do something. So I'll miss those books. I also, hang on here. I'm pulling up my list.
I'll throw mine in there, which is, although something just started playing on my computer. Thank you, Image Comics. But no surprise, Mirka Andolfo's Mercy, number 2 comes out next week. That's one that I've been waiting on. Same thing, like it came out the week before the pandemic. And it is a 6-issue limited run, or like series. So for me, it's, paramount to get all those single issues, I guess. But there are a couple others that like I think just because of the comeback like I kind of want to check out. There's Birthright, which I think is that one that our friend Drew has mentioned before.
Yep, I've read a few of those.
And then and it's one of those things of like, now that I'm looking at the Image Comics schedule, having not seen it in a while, it's kind of enticing me in a way. It's like, oh, all these books that I felt like I didn't have time to give a shot to. Now I do. And American Jesus was the other one that
American Jesus. Thank you. Definitely that one. And then also 20XX. Issue 3 had come out before the pandemic, but issue 4 and 5 were to come. I'm loving that series.
And we have not talked about that, but that one's out next week as well. Number 4.
Yep. That's a killer little series by the same creators behind Alex and Ada, which I've talked about on a previous episode. So if you liked
that's
Alex
how we
and
brought
Ada,
up 20XX. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely 20XX. And then there's all of these kind of spin-off series from the Postal universe that Deliverance, I think, is the current run, but I haven't caught up on those yet. And then I don't know, I had this fortunate opportunity to grab a bunch of stuff from the Escape Velocity's second store that had closed in the Springs before it closed. And this was like 2 weeks before quarantine. So I had a big old stack of stuff that I had been just kind of cranking through, but that is almost gone. I would say there's one other title. I'm just not finding it. It's at the tip of my tongue. I can't find it anyway. But,
interesting. Have you, as much as I do want to support indie stores and stuff like that, hit me with that title. What is it?
It's actually not a comic at all. This is a weird little shout out, but there's a magazine, a science fiction magazine called Infinite Worlds that actually follows us. The guy who runs that or puts that together has just a killer Instagram account. And so I picked up issue 1, which I think is in his 3rd printing. But oh my God, I think issue 4 comes out, issue 4 comes out soon. Issue 1 came out May of last year. So he is doing some amazing things, taking some amazing artists from across the world, some interesting articles. It is like a classic, just killer 60s, 70s science fiction magazine, but done at a really high level. So if you just love graphic art in general, I highly recommend Infinite Worlds. So I'm looking forward to, while not going to a comic shop to pick it up, although I hope some comic shops do carry it eventually, looking forward to that too.
Yeah, that's cool. I was going to ask about that. Like, one of the places where that paradigm has not shifted yet is in how we can support indie comic shops digitally. Yeah. And that is something I think I'm more interested in because I already a very flawed minimalist I am, but it's certainly during the lockdown I've gone the opposite way of like, I don't appreciate the physical objects in my house. It's like I feel crowded being in here with so much. And I almost wish that like I could just, pull it all up on the iPad and read every comic that's in my library that way. It's not always a perfect experience, I know, but it's just something that like I felt like that's the future I need to pursue. And then in that case, like, how do you support the creators doing that? I've looked at like a lot of like Kickstarters, Patreons, like what does this look like? Because I think we're back. There are ways to do that through both of those platforms, but then you're back to the, you're getting delivered like a raw file and having to upload it and, put it on your machine of choice. And I use a comic reader on the iPad called Panels. That's like a non-Comixology reader that I think is pretty good. But there's still like there's still a gap in getting something to it. It's got to come. I got to get it in the right format in order to load it into that.
Is it just because you want to support shops that use that app and not Comixology?
No, there aren't shops that use that app. That's just like if I kickstart a comic and they deliver like a CBZ file to me, then I can't load that to Comixology. So I have to load it to a separate reader. Yeah.
Man, there's a missed opportunity from Comixology to be an all-purpose reader, which is crazy because Amazon owns it. They didn't create it, but they own it. They've owned it for most of its life. Amazon also owns the Kindle. The Kindle lets you load any manner of ebook. No matter, not the Well, no, even the iOS app does that too. But like the Kindle, like the actual native device, you can put anything on that. Like I've scanned.
Can you?
Yeah, there's. I mean,
Oh,
I've
you
actually
can
sent some.
scan.
No. I've put PDFs on there. I have put open source. I think is it EPUB is the open format. I put that on there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, you can put anything on that Kindle you want. It's tragic because you and I used to be big fans of the Image Comics store before they shut that down,
Yeah.
where you could buy.
You just bought the CBURs.
But it had every kind of file in there. It had
Yep.
a CBR, it had a PDF. It was great. I sort of kind of get why they shut it down. I wish they hadn't. But if they had their own, I mean, God, if Image or if all the indie creators got together and had their own sort of version of Comixology where they could have more bang for their buck and then have maybe a profit share with the stores or something, there's a model there that could work.
This we are losing our bona fides as we speak, because there is a really great one, and the app name just escaped me. People are shouting at their radio devices right now.
iOS app. Is it just called Comic Book?
I don't think so. Dang, I cannot believe this is not in my brain.
What are you trying to describe? Because there's Madefire, there's Marvel Unlimited, there's DC, all that stuff.
No, it's a place where indie publishers can submit to this place, and they also have like the corresponding apps to read it through.
Not Chunky, YC Reader, iComics, Perfect.
It's not Gumroad, but that is one of the ones that I thought of. Like a lot of creators use Gumroad to publish everything. But there's one that has damn, I know it'll come to me. I'm so sorry that I'm being a bad comics fan right now.
So on that note, I'm a little torn because there are books I would buy at the store this week were it not for the fact that I enjoy the format on Comixology better. And they're not books that, I'm a completist, as we've talked about before. Like I own every iteration of the freaking Multiversity. And it's just like, and I'll do that for the books that I really like. And there's countless examples where I would have tried an issue or two or a full, trade volume 1 or something on Comixology, loved it so much that I bought the hardcover omnibus later on at a shop. Or bought issues, etc. So definitely can go that way, but not all the time. There's definitely books where I think I'll just bring up Postal again. I don't necessarily need to own Postal physically. I like the single panel viewing on Comixology. Does that mean? I mean, so then if I don't buy that from the comic shop, especially in this environment, that's not necessarily a great thing for them. So I need to, and there's plenty of stuff to buy. So it's not like that's the only thing I'm toying with, but it does increase the pressure to be more deliberate about my purchasing, I think, at least in the short term.
Yeah, actually that's an interesting model that I haven't pursued, which is get the omnibus, but all the everything else is digital, because for so long I was going the other way around, where almost everything I owned digitally was a trade paperback or longer. Yeah. And when I went to the comic book store, that's when I picked up single issues, because that's where it was more of like a appetizer kind of thing. I can buy like 5 single issues that are physical and then take them home and sort of figure out which series I really like, or do the pull list where it's like, okay, so at some point I can catch up on all these comics from the past. And I don't have a perfect model for how that needs to change, but I don't know. It's just a thought on my mind. Maybe I was thinking of Webtoon.
Oh,
that
Jesus.
does not sound right.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know, man.
But I think sort of the fact that we are at a loss for this, especially me, at a loss for this this platform, shows you like it's that domination of like Comixology. And I don't know that we want a future that's either shops or Comixology. Like what's the other point of distribution? I don't want everything on just the one app.
Question though, I mean, like this is because we're having the same conversation about movies right now,
right?
And it's, I don't know, man. It's an interesting time because were it not for COVID, we probably would have ended up here anyway, eventually. Maybe not as with as much pressure, but we were always headed to like, this was always sort of a can that kept getting kicked down the road. Like, okay, what is the sustainability of comic shops ultimately? Which ones deserve to fail? Which ones should be maintained? Why? What's the model? Same thing applies to movie theaters. There's a lot of movie theaters that you always kind of look at and go, interesting, that's still there. I mean, the Alamo draft houses of the world and the very interesting niche local theaters that, you know, have a lot of interesting programming, like those will always be fine because they're sui generis, they're unique. There's a cachet to them that you can't find anywhere else. But there's a lot of AMCs and a lot of Regals and a lot of Carmikes that look the same no matter where you go and really aren't that special. And it's like, okay, do these deserve to exist? Should they? And if they go away, does that hurt the consumer eventually? That's
And that's interesting in light of your Starbucks example earlier, which was growing up for me, there were weird, unique coffee shops in Nashville. Mm-hmm. You know, there's like the Bongo Java. That's the only one I can think of pre-Starbucks domination. I mean, I
what's the one from across from Belmont? Oh my God, I just forgot the name. It was in the house, and they've added onto it. Shit.
Yeah, that's Bongo Java, right?
That's Bongo Java. Well, wait.
And then there's Fido, which is the one on
Fido.
Down
Okay,
in Hillsborough Village, and
I was confused.
But it's the same owner for those. I mean, there's Frothy Monkey, and there's plenty of other like indie ones. My point being, like when I was there in school, there were only like a couple. Like, we went more to like Perkins for late night studying or something.
Oh, Perkins, man.
Starbucks came in and dominated like mainstream coffee consumption, but also I think helped be responsible for more people like understanding coffee shops, wanting to drink them, and then creating their own unique coffee shop experiences. Now, whether those sort of small stores can survive a pandemic shutdown like we've been through is, like that's pretty dire. Certainly hope for the best, but maybe some Disneyfication of theaters would lead to the same thing, where like if they truly, if Amazon or Disney owned most of the movie market, then maybe what happens is a lot of like little niche local Alamo Drafthouse kind of style things pop up where it's like, hey, here's the unique experience that you're not going to get in the Disney theaters, and so, is it good for the consumer?
Well, the thing about comic shops they've always had the advantage of most of the time, anybody who works there is both passionate about the medium and knows a hell of a lot about, a variety of books. And hopefully, luckily, a lot of shops have, their guy who's like really into all the DC stuff. And then another guy who's really into, or gal who's really into the, the niche kind of indie stuff. And then it's like, hey, I can, somebody else is like, I can handle all of your queer reading, like right here. It's like all of it. There's somebody who has a point of view and a very informed one. Much like you used to see at indie record stores back in the day. Yeah,
exactly.
Your mileage may vary, but comic shops, and there might be some attitude now and then, but for the most part, like the people who work there love it. They want you to engage. They want you to be a fan too. And so like that quality by itself, I think will carry a lot of people through this. I hope some shops were over leveraged, both in terms of either inventory or footprint. So you might see some shops downsize in terms of, hey, we're going to move into a smaller store. We might, maybe we split into two smaller, like kind of pop-up style stores, or, we might even see comic book kiosks pop up where it's just like, hey, it's, kind of like when you go into an airport and there's like a mini version of the local city bookstore there that's just like, it looks and kind of feels the same, but it's much, much smaller. Maybe there's like a single person kind of running the desk and maybe only 4 or 5 people can fit at any given time. Maybe that's what comics turned into. And then the question becomes, what should their inventory be? Because you and I have both had an amazing experience picking up the most niche obscure stuff in comic shops that we would have never found otherwise. Even online, we would have never run into those things. If shops have to take on more and more mainstream titles or big two titles, or some combination thereof, I worry that the indie creator is there going to be like two classes of comic creators where like, there are those who are big enough or sell well enough to be in the shop and everybody else is just relegated to online. And then does that create a whole generation of reader that is only of predisposed to digital and they never go into a shop? Like there's all these knock-on effects that going back to anxiety and stress.
Does it become something like a Kickstarter where, like one of the I think exciting things in the gaming hobby, which I'm not fully immersed in, but my friends who are really into like board gaming, is you kickstart something, you get a really high quality made game, but they might only make 500 of those, you know?
Yes.
And the thing is like, but you start following the creator, and I can see comic creators doing something similar where it's like, hey, kickstart the physical book, you know, but like the digital one will be available forever, but you're going to get the special edition, you know. I don't know that that's a terrible way to go, because we do have a real, very, very similar to the music hitting digital, is there's a great democratization of the tools. And like a lot of the comic book artists I follow, I am constantly shocked at what they can do with Procreate on iPads, which is a $10 program that, like, you know, I own and can't do anything like that.
Yeah.
And you know, but it is possible. There's a very low bar to entry for a new artist. Get an iPad, that's expensive, sure, but then buy this $10 program and an Apple Pencil, and you know, you're using the same tools that the pros are using.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that a new model emerges. I like the idea that you talked about, like the footprint of some of these places, because the game shop where I usually play D&D, I mentioned, is like very huge, just square footage wise. But only very recently, before the pandemic, did I discover this other game shop in Fullerton, California, called Dice House, which is this cool little curated store with
Run
just
by Andrew Dice Clay. There you go. Hey,
The
diddle
Dice Man.
diddle, welcome to my show. Like, oh god.
Yeah, it's just insults the whole time you're in there. No, it was just a lovely place with, like, you know, several long tables put together in the middle, but that's it. So you're doing all your shopping around the one main, like, long table where people are gaming, and, you know, just like really, really well curated, to hit that word again. Like, and I'm sure it's a place where, if, you know, it reminded me of the best comic book shops where you could go talk to the guy and say, oh, do you have Scythe? And he's like, well, we're all sold out, but I'll order you one and it'll be here next week. That kind of thing. You know, he knows what you're talking about, or if you like that, why don't you try this one? Or, you know, whatever you want, that person knows where it is, how to get it, you know, when they'll have it. Just that kind of great experience. So I don't think that downsizing is a terrible thing. You know, if you can find, we've talked about this for years. Like, you can find that one expert that, like, can curate to your tastes. That's what you need, more than just all the warehouse space in the world, which is what the Disneys and the Amazons are never going to understand.
Yeah, but then there's like Mile High Comics in Denver, which does have all the warehouse space you could imagine, and it's almost like, there are days I would walk in there and I'm just like, oh my God, I could spend 5 hours in here. And then there are days where I'm just like, I'm never going to find what I need. There's just too much. So there's a happy medium, I'm sure. I don't know what, man, I keep going back and forth. I've shouted out some of my favorite shops before, but I think, like, I'll keep going back to my favorite two examples. In Portland, there are two shops. One is called Bridge City Comics, over off of Mississippi. Shout out to them. The other one is called Floating World Comics, downtown, right across from the Chinese Gardens. And both of them, I think, are probably great examples of, like, really well done, well run comic shops. And they are because their inventory is really well considered, and they let the staff get hyper curate. You know, they let the staff curate that stuff intensely. So you've got, like, you know, everybody, oftentimes staff members have their own shelves, but they'll reorient things. It's like, hey, here's the Alan Moore shelf. Here's the Hickman shelf. Here's the Morrison shelf. And they'll have, like, little explainers about why, you know, if you're going to start with Grant Morrison, get these 4 books to start with, and then, you know, you'll fall into this world. And I think that curation is, when they're more like museums where you can buy the art, I think that's the key.
Honestly, that's an experience that I would like to see replicated across so many places. Like, I would love to see that in game shops, in coffee shops. Like, that's, you know, I like that too, when I go in a coffee shop and it's not just the same menu that's everywhere. You know, or, you know, this place has great cold brew. And for me, like, I don't really like cold brew. I like iced coffee. So if I find a place that does, like, brews it hot but puts it on ice, I'm always like, ooh, I got to try that, you know? that sort of model, I think that's like, to me, hopefully we see that on the recovery. Like, tell me what's good. Don't just give me everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's a restaurant or a comic book shop or whatever. So
give me an experience I can't have anywhere else.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
And that's well said. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we've
kind of positive, right? We should
that's
end
positive.
On that
No, there's a lot to look forward to. There's going to be some casualties along the way, sadly. And everybody should just support your creators, your favorite shops. Just give them some extra love over these next few months, because they're certainly going to need it. And we'll, as we come up with ideas and things to help, we'll promote them here. But I think just go out there and buy some books. Really, take care. Talk to your shops. Ask if you're a designer or developer or marketer. Ask them if they need help. Provide your services if that's something you're interested in doing, or maybe you can help join in and create new opportunities for customer engagement. Like, if you have a favorite shop, probably better than they do what gets people excited. You are a fan of that shop. Offer that point of view. See what happens.
Yeah.
Anyway,
good to hear.
I think we've said it all, man.
Woo!
backthecomeback.com.
It will be really exciting next week when, although we got to wait 2 more weeks for Decorum. Dang.
I know.
But we will have new comics to discuss. Although I still have a TBR pile, so I still have plenty of stuff I could be reading.
Real quick, you have read Nightly News all the way through, right?
I have not actually finished it. No.
Okay. Because we're pausing on that for a variety of reasons. I just didn't know if you had read it yet, or if you were still working on it.
I'm still working on it after we made the call not to record that show. But it is interesting. I'll tell you, it's really interesting reading it back to back with Decorum, because I had read the Decorum issue 1 before I picked up Nightly News. So yeah, that'll be interesting to discuss sometime. I think Hickman, when we discuss Decorum, we can discuss sort of like the whole oeuvre, the Hickman world, Hickman-verse.
Yes.
I feel like I have enough touchstones in it now to understand a little bit more about it.
Excellent. Well, if you want to see more, we're literally wherever you can find podcasts. We're finally back on Spotify after some delays there, so yay. If you're listening, subscribe, tell your friends, share, visit us at panelism.inc. That's panelism.ink. That's also our Instagram handle. Search for panelism.ink on Instagram. Shout us out there. It's kind of the easiest way to get in touch. Just send us a direct message there. See all our episodes, and then we'll be back soon. We're gonna have a lot more coming. I think now that we're getting back into the swing of things, we'll have some more regular stuff for you, hopefully going forward. So stay tuned.
Yes, it'll be good to talk again when I've watched all of Devs and What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh my God, so much to talk about. And there's no Comic-Con this year, so you'll have even more time to consume and discuss.
Yeah, that's true.
SDCC.
Man, that's it's a bittersweet pill right there.
I'm sorry.
But it's like Memorial Day. It's just a catch-up day. Yeah. It's like there's no Comic-Con. Okay, I got 4 days to catch up on this TBR pod.
Just means next year's going to be even bigger. All the pent up energy. It's like, oh my God, I'll have an extra year to work on my cosplay. It's going to be the most badass thing ever. Somebody can actually build a real arc reactor for their Iron Man suit.
I'm pretty sure I'm still going to go in a hazmat suit.